Julianna. You're watching ACT.tv. Human beings are naturally inclined toward being social, and it's our instinct to care for one another, even outside of our own family. How do those instincts square with the social distancing we're all required to practice right now? Seth Shostak joins us of the SETI Institute. He is here to talk more about that. Seth directs the search for extraterrestrials at the SETI Institute in California, trying to find evidence of intelligent life in space, not in politics. So it's an easier job. He is also one of the hosts of the radio program Big Picture Science. He's committed to getting the public, especially young people, excited about astrobiology and science in general. Seth, thanks for joining us on the program today.
Well, thank you. I hope you haven't got me mixed up with another guest. I don't know if I can talk about that subject, but I'm happy to try.
Well, in the latest episode of Big Picture Science, you explore the ways that human beings are naturally inclined toward being social. Talk about why that is.
Well, there are some advantages. I mean, I hate to say it, but it may be something that's simply hardwired into us. There are some species that are, in fact, social species. I mean, you think of dolphins, maybe to some extent whales, certainly primates, right? And it turns out that being social, I mean, that obviously that helps you. If you have a small squad of your own species, you might be more successful in A, getting some food, and B, fighting off the competitors. So there are some benefits to being a social
You mean it's not just about processing our collective traumas from childhood?
Yeah, no, well, you can look, that's looking at the paint job and deciding that the car is good or bad. I mean, I think that it's deeper than that. But I think that the interesting thing about our being social is that it's probably responsible for our intelligence. I mean, one of the big questions in science is, why did this particular line of hominids become smart? Right? I mean, you go to Africa, you look at the great apes. Well, smart. I mean, not too bad, right? I mean, compared to a lot of other critters, right? I mean,
yeah, okay.
When the rhinos moved in next door, they didn't always keep the place nice. So
they weren't concerned about COVID germs on their paws or whatever you call rhino feet.
No, that didn't bother them at all. No, but that's a big question in science. How did we get smart? What was the development there? Was it a miracle? And probably it wasn't a miracle. There's a guy actually at the University of Mexico who says he understands how it happened. It was all due to dating behavior of our ancestors.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well.
Trying to do it.
Well, but it was more than that. It was the selection. It was the selection. It's an interesting theory. It takes about 1 minute, so that's a long time, but whatever. He said that for our species, like a lot of species, the males display and the females decide, right? Okay, that's pretty much true. I mean, if you think about it, right?
Which is so weird because if we talk about advertising, what the ad industry does, it has convinced us that it's the opposite. I wear the makeup, I display, and then you come to me. Whereas really, like if I look at the birds in my backyard, the brown bird, the brown cardinal, she's not wearing any fancy colors. It's the male who's doing all the singing and dancing and showmanship, etc. So I also try not to be fooled.
Yeah, but it just depends on the species. In the case of birds, you're right. It's the females that are desirable. So they don't have to dress up, right? The males have to dress up and the females decide.
They got to blend because they're going to sit in the nest and cover those eggs. They want to look like a leaf. No?
Don't tell them that. But yes, that could be. Anyhow, this guy, Jeff Miller's idea is that he said, look, in the case of a peacock, for example, the peahens with their little pea brains are looking at the males, and the males have these big blue feathers. And they just say, well, that guy with that big blue feathers, he's the one, right? And they do that. You might wonder why they do that. They do that because if he can grow those big blue feathers, the chicks will probably be healthy, which is what her real interest is.
Reproductive fitness, as it turns out.
Right.
Yes.
So in the case of our hominid ancestors, the women were looking around. The guys don't have any blue feathers, but if they can sing or they can, tell an interesting story, unlike this one, they can do something like that. Then they figure their brain is wired up correctly, and consequently,
Actually, you know what?
kids
You know what? My husband is a biologist, a neurobiologist, and we talk about this stuff occasionally. The thing that signals reproductive fitness in both men and women is if your face is actually equal on both sides. If you don't have, it has a symmetry. So there's some sort of symmetry that people pick up on, that you're more attractive if you have symmetry. It's very odd, but no one talks about that.
Well, I mean, symmetry's good, but what he was saying was that if the guys could demonstrate that their brains were wired up correctly, so the women were raising the IQ of the guys, and that's how it happened.
Obviously, that keeps going in our culture today. Women raising the IQs of the guys. Nothing, Seth? No.
Well, I suppose it's true, but I mean, there is the question. I always sort of wonder about this because it makes the guys sound valuable, and I think that the women know that that's not true. You really don't need all these guys running around, do you? I mean,
no, we really just need the one to make the one baby, and then we'll take care of the rest. You go get the food. That's it. Well, here's the question: what about social needs stemming from the fact that children actually need more than, it takes a village, as they say. So, and I know that for sure now because I've been locked in my apartment with a 4-year-old for months. So it's just, one parent, even two parents are not enough. You really need social development they need other kids. They need people of different ages. They need people older. They need, more than just their parents. Do you think the raising of children has something to do with how?
Well, it does in various ways. I mean, the fact that we have big brains, that's a reproductive problem. I mean,
Tell me about it.
yeah, but I mean, you might not notice that at your local bar, but I mean, it is true because those big heads. It's very hard for a woman to give birth to a kid with a big head, right?
Yeah.
So they're born with small heads, and then for the first N years of their lives, their brains get bigger, they learn a few things, and eventually they can sort of take care of themselves. But for most animals, they're born ready to go, right? They're born, and 2 minutes later they're standing up and walking around. That's not true for human babies, and that's a consequence of big brains. I mean, big brains have a lot of disadvantages, and that's why. I mean, it's a real question. You may hear this from your husband. You have Earth; it starts having some sort of life 3.5, 4 billion years ago. And then, you wait 3.5, 4 billion years, and finally you get something that can have a TV show. I mean, that's
isn't that a devolution? So if being social is what makes us human, how does social distancing affect us, on this? We're all having our different experiences. We have our psychologists who tell us, but basically on the scientific sort of natural level, how is this affecting us being put?
I can't believe it's going to be good. I mean, there've been some articles in the papers, you might have read some of them, about this working at home, that at first everybody's more productive working at home. I find it myself, I'm just sitting here all day wearing my fingers to the nubs on this $2 keyboard, doing something. I'm not sure, answering email, writing up.
You're on this show. We're plumbing your brilliance here. We appreciate it.
Well, it got plumbed a long time ago. Anyhow, and removed. But so in fact, what happens in the beginning is that productivity goes up when you're not with all those other people in the office who keep coming into the office and distracting you. But apparently the experience of some major corporations is that this works for a while and then it goes south, that people become less productive. So,
because we're like, oh, I guess I could just watch TV while I'm doing this. Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Not just that, the very immediate distractions, but also the lack of stimulus from talking to people in the halls or just wandering into the next cube and saying, Rodney, I've been thinking about this problem and I think that we're totally, doing the wrong thing. I mean, you can't do that so easily at home.
Yeah, that is so true. And my cat doesn't know how to solve these larger societal issues, although I try to talk to her. you know.
Well, wait 100 million years. Your captain gets better.
I will wait. Seth, how are you searching for extraterrestrial intelligence now that you're quarantined at your home?
Well, fortunately, our search doesn't depend very much on my leaving this house for various reasons, but one of which is the fact that the search is pretty much automated. That's a technical point, but the search goes on. And in fact, one of the projects we're involved with the people at the University of California, Berkeley, which is on the other side of the bay here, is to use what's called the Very Large Array. That's a lot of antennas down in the desert areas of New Mexico.
Oh my God, I forgot that you were in San Francisco. I was there in November. And I was like, how do I not know anyone here? And then, anyway, next time, if they ever let us travel again,
yeah,
or if it's ever safe to travel. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I got distracted when you said Berkeley.
No, Berkeley, but I'm not in Berkeley. I'm in the Silicon Valley. You don't want to be in Berkeley. I know those people there are very strange. But
yeah, my favorite kinds. Strange.
Take the coffee from under your nose, and
Silicon Valley. Everyone's working at home in Silicon Valley. That's interesting.
They are, and that, as I say, that seems to be okay for a while. I mean, I kind of wonder. Google, for example, is headquartered about 2 miles from where I'm sitting here, and if you go over there, it's this huge complex. If you work for Google and you need a haircut, I mean, I need a haircut, but if you need a haircut, they've got barbers on site. You need your shoes repaired, they got that. You need the laundry done, you need childcare, you need whatever you need, car tuned up. It's all on site. They don't want you to leave. And now everybody has left. Kind of wonder what that's going to mean.
That is an interesting phenomenon. Very, very interesting. How, if people are ever going, I think people here in New York are just waiting to see if we're going to go back. And then as we watch the rest of the country go back after really not having gone home in the first place, we're like, oh, I guess we're not going to, this is a longer term, new normal engagement that we're after.
Oh, from a bigger picture point of view, I would say this is sort of a reminder that, we like to think we're in control of our destinies. And that nature out there is either benign or has been tamed, and it's simply not true. I mean, before breakfast tomorrow, there could be an asteroid 5 miles in size that slams into the Earth and takes out everything. I mean,
I hope it waits till at least after breakfast. That's the most important meal of the day.
That's right. If you're going to get wiped out by an asteroid, you want to have a good breakfast.
Well, this is why I like you, because we both share this sense of humor of like, so, okay, well, hey, could happen. We'll be all right. If we're dead, it's fine. Yeah.
It's true. I might mention another story that has been kind of in the news, if anybody's reading any news other than COVID and politics, and that is there's a small team a couple of guys at Nottingham University in the UK who published a study in a very prestigious journal, in which they estimated the number of alien civilizations in the Milky Way. And they came up with a lowball estimate of 36. To begin with, you got to say, wow, they could do it to 2 decimal places, which was pretty good to begin with. But 36 is a very small number when you consider there are 1 trillion planets in the Milky Way. So that caused a bit of a...
Everybody likes to feel special, like we're the 36 lives out of trillions. Come on.
That's exactly it. That's exactly the bottom line. We like to think we're special. Yeah. We always have. I mean,
What could, if this goes on, this staying at home, do you think our society in general, like the overall way we learn to communicate and to be with each other, our natural tendencies will shift? Will they be impacted, or will we just all suffer because our naturalness is set to socialize?
Yeah, I don't know. Personally, I think we'll probably go back. I mean, there's some studies coming out now about pandemics in history, right? You have to say that pandemics are kind of a new invention for humans. We didn't have them a long time ago because there weren't big clusters of people. It was very hard for this sort of thing to spread. But once you invent cities, and then something like the Roman Empire, for example, or the Roman Republic, actually. I mean, there's a paper out these days about how the Roman Republic might have been done in by this.
Oh yeah, I just read that, or an article about that paper. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was
So
in the
that's
Atlantic.
one thing, and of course the the Black Death, the Great Plagues of the 1300s, that wiped out like half the population of Europe.
And
But
yet we're still overpopulated and
yeah,
overconsuming.
exactly. It didn't make a whole lot.
All of that wiping out, and yet
It didn't seem to help much. I mean, maybe rents went down. I don't know, but so I just looking at history, I'd say that this is a terrible time, but humans will bounce back because they tend to forget stuff.
That's true. I also had the thought that to your point that living in cities is sort of a more it's a late history type of thing. People used to live in smaller groups. So is it possible that it actually might be healthier for us to congregate in our smaller community groups that maybe were more like what our original ancestors had lived through? Is it possible it's actually healthier? I mean, a lot of people are moving out of the big cities, especially this one, including this girl, because we just can't take it anymore. It's making us crazy, especially now that we're trapped in our homes.
Well, how big is the place you're going to? Is it 10 people?
No, it's like 500 people.
Small number.
Oh, we're moving to the woods. We're 500 people live in the woods.
Okay, that's fine. But do you still want Wi-Fi or things like that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I got to do my job from home.
Yeah, I mean, it's a question. You look at it. If you have, particularly for men, would they go hunting in these sort of less, if you will, technological societies? You get 4 or 5 of them. That's kind of the optimum number. You're playing basketball, 4 or 5 of them, right? You don't need 500 of them on the court, right? You get 500 guys together and they put on uniforms and, they wreak havoc and destruction.
Yes.
But in small groups, they're actually better, right? They can do things. It's like wolves. You get a small group of them together and they're pretty good. So there is a limited number. If you get too big a group, things begin to go non-linear. Things go nuts.
We're speaking with Seth Shostak. He's the co-host of Big Picture Science. Seth is also he directs the search for extraterrestrials at the SETI Institute in California. If you have questions, and they can be on any topic that you may want to throw at Seth, put them in the stream chat now. You don't have to stick to this topic. So I'm giving the Twitch audience an opportunity to ask you questions that they would like to ask you. Seth and I met at the Conference on World Affairs in Boulder, where they put people who know very little about certain subjects on a panel with people who are experts on those subjects, and hilarity ensues, and interesting conversation ensues. So feel free to ask away, and Seth, hopefully you'll play along here, and they'll ask you something that would be useful to everyone. Here is the first comment coming in from La Femme Fatale. How many of the planets in the Milky Way are within the Goldilocks zone that we know life like ours can survive? On which life like ours can survive?
Yeah, exactly. That's a good question. And Femme Fatale actually knows about the Goldilocks zone and so forth. I mean,
we have very smart people in the chat, far smarter than me. That's why I want them to ask the questions.
Well, that's a good question. The data are still somewhat tentative, but the answer to FF's question is that roughly 1 in 5 stars has a planet that's at the right distance from its sun, from its star, so that the temperatures are neither too cold nor too hot for liquid water. So, if you say that there are, I mean, how many stars are there in the Milky Way? Maybe 250 billion. So that means like 50 billion sort of planets in the Goldilocks zone. So that's where you should order soup.
Here's a question that might sound crazy, and it might be just out there, but is it absolutely necessary for life to require water? Could there be a kind of life that is intelligent, that is based on another configuration?
Well, it could be. I mean, one shouldn't be too self-centered about one's biochemistry, but I think you do need a liquid of some sort because, otherwise you don't get too much chemical interaction, right? And life is just chemistry. I mean, I know you don't wake up, Julianna, in the morning saying another day of chemistry, but that's it. I mean, that's really what it is. And if you don't have liquids, you don't get too much action. But it doesn't have to be water. The only thing about water is that it is a pretty good liquid because it's liquid over a wide range of temperatures, and there's lots of it. There's water everywhere. I mean, with obvious exceptions. I mean, there's water all over the universe is my point. So, maybe you have some liquid ammonia based life somewhere. I mean, you can't rule it out, but if I had to bet, I'd say most of it's water.
Another question coming in, given how old the universe is and the number likely ETs out there, why does Seth think we have not heard from ETs yet? Surely there is more advanced life than us, ? Also from Femme Patel.
Yes. Well, there undoubtedly is. I mean, we look at
They don't want to talk to us. They see what we're doing and they're like, we're done.
Yeah, but I hear that a lot, the aliens they're remaining coy because we're so worthless. But, I don't know. There are people at Harvard that study ants, right? And you could argue that the ants are kind of uninteresting and worthless too. But, I mean, I don't think that's it. I think the fact that we haven't heard anything from the aliens, I don't know what it means. It could mean there aren't any aliens, but that's, again,
the Harvard researchers don't tell the ants they're coming and they're studying them.
No, they don't. And I don't think the ants even notice. So there you go. It could be that the aliens are studying us and we don't notice. That sounds like a sci-fi movie. But I think it's just the fact that we haven't looked in very many places.
What is coming up on Big Picture Science this week?
Well, we're actually working on sort of a show about some strange things about the COVID pandemic. And we've done a lot of shows about COVID and the science of COVID and bats and stuff like that, pangolins. But this one will be about some interesting things about, well, for example, since you're more politically inclined, this comment of that church, I think it was in Arizona, that they had some ionization equipment.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah,
they said you can come to church because we have ionization and everyone will be fine and don't bother wearing a mask.
Exactly. So we'll talk to some researchers about, is that completely bonkers, which of course it is, and also the development of some new masks and things like that, but also other questions about, you flush the toilet, is that going to spray the room with COVID virus or not? And that
is it? We better listen. When does this episode come out? When does it drop?
Well, it won't, not for another 10 days.
So. Oh, okay. I'll try not to flush the toilet for 10 days.
Well, it's not something that nice people do anyhow. I would.
Seth, yeah. Thank you. I want to thank you for coming on the show. I also want to apologize for us having to bump you, I think, twice because of social unrest here in New York City. So I
always yield to social unrest.
Once the aliens are doing the social unrest, you will be our first guest, and you will never be bumped by a movement protester. I promise you that.
All right, Julianna.
Seth Shostak, find him on his podcast, Big Picture Science. It's a podcast, it's a radio show. Google it, and you will find it. Seth, thanks a lot for joining us. I appreciate it.